where did you grow up and what was a young Tieraona like?
So I grew up a lot in the woods. I wanted to be a park ranger when I grew up. So I thought, what could be better? You could ride a horse and like wander around the forest and like tell people to put out their fires. So I was a Girl Scout, and so all the things that could keep me with horses. I had horses. I had a horse growing up, and so for me, this deep, long love of nature itself. And so flora and fauna. I love the animals. I love wildlife. I love trees. I'm deeply drawn to great big towering pines and Douglas fir. And I liked to fish as a kid. So I think I spent a lot of time with my grandparents and my people from Oklahoma, Kansas, South Dakota, a little bit Nebraska, but that whole middle part of the country. And I think that from a very young age, because I was so much outdoors, that it really fostered a deep love for the environment and for nature in general. And I love the plants. My great grandmother was a midwife, and my grandmother shared with me all kinds of things that she would use. And then, later on, I studied midwifery myself. And so I think I sometimes feel, Mason, like I feel sad for kids today, because I think many children don't get that freedom to just be out in the woods or out by the lake or playing in streams, catching frogs. I mean, that was my life. And I think for my generation, I think that there was still a lot of that for kids. And I think today there's that children don't get that same sort of level of being out in nature, so unencumbered and so free. And I worry that a generation that wants to be very close to nature and where their food comes from and, have this really strong ethos around that, has a big disconnection from it too, because they just haven't spent much time in it.
Yeah, I grew up in West Eugene, and where I used to live was essentially kind of almost the border of the countryside. And yeah, I would just do just that. I'd go to the streams over there and catch crawdads actually. And then,
Yes.
And now when I go back now, it's a lot more developed. So yeah, it does seem like the city just keeps expanding, allowing less opportunity for kiddos to, be immersed in nature. Also, I got to say, I have an Oklahoma connection as well. I was born in Oklahoma City. Not many people know that, but so it sounds like your grandparents were influences on you, but did you have any early herbal mentors?
Well, I think that for me, it was interesting because everybody in the family knew something about herbs. I mean, so it's like, I also think that generations, my parents passed in 2020, both of them, and my brother, all within 88 days of each other, which was very difficult for our family. But my parents and my grandparents all knew, how to use plantain and what sage gargle was for a sore throat, or drinking chamomile for quieting children, or echinacea. Actually, I knew echinacea as a kid for fevers and sore throats, and also for wounds. My grandmother was a lover of comfrey. Stuff grew all over, took over her garden. But I mean, so I think that generation, also rural people of that time, knew more about how to take care of themselves using the things around them. I mean, my grandmother would also use an onion plaster, right? She would cook an onion and then she'd plaster it on your chest, and, mustard plasters on our chest. I mean, so there were a lot of home remedies that people used because nobody went to the doctor back then. Nobody went to the doctor. I fractured my collarbone getting thrown from a horse when I was 10 or 11 years old. And, my dad didn't even think I needed to go to the doctor. I really wanted to go to the doctor because my bone was sticking out. And my mother said, I think we should take her in. But even there, to that level, people were like, my dad said, well, there's not much you can do for a broken collarbone, which he was correct, but it needed to be cleaned out and looked at. So I see also in modern times today how we're not teaching our kids what is a healthy fever. What is a healthy fever? And, your 4-year-old, are they still eating? Are they peeing? Yes, they have a fever and they're fussy and they don't feel good, but they're eating, they're peeing, they're drinking, and that does not require a trip to the doctor in most cases. And I say this as a physician, I'm saying this as a family doctor, that we overutilize urgent cares and emergency rooms for oftentimes things that don't require that level of care. And what often happens then is that we end up prescribing antibiotics for minor conditions that an antibiotic is not beneficial for, because they're often viral. And also it contributes to overuse of antibiotics and antibiotic resistance. So, I am grateful for the fact that I grew up more rural with more of a exposure that didn't seem like something different. I thought everybody knew that, because I thought everybody's grandparents kind of knew that, and your parents sort of knew the same thing. Sage gargle was huge in our house for any kind of sore throat. And so I yarrow was another one for fever. So some of these things were just commonly known and used. And I fear that some of that knowledge is really being lost. And also even with herbal medicine, Mason, there's this strong move for everything to be standardized and to be in a pill and an extract, and to be oftentimes quite costly, where sage you could grow in your garden and you could just dry it yourself, and you've got a sore throat remedy, and you've got a remedy for fever and upset tummy, and you can cook with it. I mean, you can do everything with it. Thyme is another one of my favorites that, every house should have thyme, because it's for indigestion, poor tummy problems, bad cough, as an expectorant, cough suppressant, helps thin mucus, makes it easier to get out. It's still approved in Germany and Europe for whooping cough, because it's such an effective cough remedy. So, I also look at industry, herbal industry, and then I look at herbalists, and then I look at the common person, and that I don't want to see herbal medicine all relegated to high potency standard extracts that are basically pharmaceutical drugs masquerading as herbs. And I'm not saying that there's not a place for standardized extracts. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's this strong movement for everything to become that. And I think that that's a dangerous trend.